Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I'm Duffy Duck here once again, and I'm back for some more of the Maxi Toys videos, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Sonic Unleashed for the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3, or some people usually call this game Sonic Unleashed HD, because, you know, it's in HD quality instead of like the standard quality, like the forms of 480p, or 480i, or 720p, or something like that. So anyways, the last time we actually did tackle for the forms of, I would say, the daytime level in the forms of Empire City, and especially noticeable in the forms of Shamar nighttime level. And that was a pretty long run through for that particular stage of Shamar Night. And speaking of such, is that we're going back into the forms of Shamar Night. Speaking of which, is that in this particular episode, is the fact that we're going to be heading back to Shamar to able to actually deal with one last thing before we're able to tackle through the final continent before the true final continent in the game, but in forms of, well, if you couldn't tell already, but in forms of the final area or the final region or the final continent throughout the game, but I won't spoil for this yet. So anyway though, so let's go ahead and first off we need to able to talk to Professor Pickle really quickly. Because of that though, that we can able to actually just to proceed what's going on up next in the forms of objectives wise, because even then, now you know, we've already tackled through both Shamar Night and Shamar Day, so that means that we can able to actually deal with the next boss in this game. So yeah, let's see how this goes. Excellent work in Empire City, because yeah, it says EC means Empire City. You must tell me all about the situation there. The manuscript suggests a temple lies in the Anabat area. And remember to continue exploring Shamar as well. New roads might be open. So yes, now we can able to do the Shamar boss level, and especially noticeable by the forms of still able to actually suggest to go to Anabat Nights, but somehow I'm not going to do that just yet, because might as well go those in this chronological order, but in forms of finishing up with Shamar first, and then we can able to get into Anabat. I don't know why, in the forms of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 version will force you to able to go through the nighttime Anabat level, and also by the forms of after that it'll be Shamar's boss fight, which even then might be sounds a little bit of an odd of an order, but hey, at least we can able to actually deal with these particular stuff in the corresponding order. So in order to actually get to this boss fight is the fact that we need to get into here, because we've already technically been there before because of the actual meteor item that we've actually equipped. So that way we can actually fight against ourselves, the Dark Guardian. So yeah, just like how it does in the forms of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 version, that there's no cutscene involved in the forms of, well, technically there is a cutscene that's usually shown up in the forms of the Dark Guardian himself, but for I've looked at the actual, this guy right there, in the forms of the HD version of the game, he's actually a lot smaller compared to it does it in the forms of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 version, because in those two versions of the game, basically he goes really big. Like, I cannot stand this enough for how the fact that he's actually way gigantic on that version, whilst in this version, that he's pretty small by the looks of all that. It's nothing more intimidating by the looks of all things, so that's how it usually comes to the goods. So basically this is how the entire gimmick about this boss fight though, compared to how it does in the forms of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 versions, is that the Wii/PlayStation 2 versions, that normally you can able to beat the likes out of the forms of Dark Guardian with no problem, because he's absolutely a joke on that particular version, on that, you know, the standard version of the forms of, or the standard edition version of the forms of Sonic Unleashed, because he doesn't deal that much attacks. Well, besides he just occasionally makes me feel dizzy, all that stuff, especially noticeable I keep on getting whacked by the hammer most of the time. But in this particular version of Dark Guardian, yes, I already know, Chip, I've already noticed that. So anyways though, the main gimmick of this boss fight in this Xbox 360/PlayStation 3 counterparts is the fact that we need to shove over this little particular cube obstacle, or this little object, and this way you can able to actually drag it all the way to this little blue pendulum right there, and if you do that, then it'll deal some of the damage on the forms of Dark Guardian. Now, you would normally thinking that you're trying to beat the likes out of Dark Guardian, no problem, but it turns out that if you you know, to beat the likes of the Dark Guardian, you will able to actually temporarily stun him, but after a few seconds he will regain himself back into its normal state. So because of that though, his health is somewhat generating a little bit, but unlike how it does in the forms of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 versions, the fact that you need to be very fast before you're able to actually beat the likes of Dark Guardian before he regenerates his health again, assuming depends on what size he's in. So sometimes you got to be very careful with some of these attacks, and most annoyingly, the forms of these little fences. I have no idea why the fences will allow you to hurt me this time through, but that mainly seems the case by the forms of some hazards involved. So there we go, there's another cube has gone in. So basically every time you drag those little cube shapes formations on the forms of the actual areas themselves, mainly on that part for instance, basically you're able to actually just to classify for able to deal some of the damage on the forms of this little purple stuff in the forms of the actual blue side of the actual arena. So kind of thing about it though is that this, yeah, you're gonna have to be very careful about the forms of you don't want to let the enemies go drag up one of those cube odd items onto your side, because if it does, I could assuming it that you instantly managed to fail on that, or I'm not 100% sure on that one, because I know that a lot of people seem to already master this particular boss fight. So anyways, but for the most part though, this boss is not too bad honestly. But even then though, that sometimes it gets a little bit busy work until you're able to realize that they have to do that like 3 times, because obviously you do have 3 cube items to able to actually shove it over into the other side of the forms of the boss arena. That way you can able to actually deal some of the damage by the forms of the Dark Guardian. So that's pretty obvious at this point. So even then, that's the 3rd and final cube that we can able to actually insert from. And boom, there we go. If you think that the boss was over, but it turns out that we need to beat him for one final time, and assuming if we actually finish his guide. Booyah, there we go. I really like that reference actually, because he points it out by the forms of the reference saying Amy Rose, because you know, she normally also has her Pico hammer as well. But even then though, that's actually pretty cool. So anyways though, we've only got a B rank, which is okay, even though I've only have to collect like rings, or especially get some more time left, before I'm able to actually get myself my beautiful S rank. But oh well, nothing matters anyway, because now we can able to actually restore not only the 5th continent, but also the 5th Chaos Emerald. So yeah, the 5th Chaos Emerald's color is the forms of yellow, because that's what it represents Shumar. Usually it's more accurately a desert-themed continent, so even though, you know, tons of sands everywhere, and you know the rest. So, 5 continents down, and only 2 more to go. And speaking of which, we've done 5 Chaos Emeralds restored, so only 2 more Chaos Emeralds left to be restored. So even then, what could possibly go next? Well, obviously, as I've already mentioned this before, that now we need to actually hit out by the forms of Anabat now, by the forms of doing a nighttime level first, because, well, technically we've already been into Anabat before, but only for metal grinding, for by the forms of metal hunting and all that stuff, which is always a thing though. So anyways, let's go ahead and exit out the Shumar, because I'm pretty sure we don't have to worry about the forms of Professor Pickle from now on. So anyways, let's go ahead and head into Anabat for a second time for this particular Let's Play, because, well, I've already gone through these metal hunting for about, you know, few parts ago. Sorry, I can't speak very well, folks, but I really do apologize, because even then, well, besides, I just want to mention things out, but before we get into the actual nighttime level, but first off, let's go ahead and get into the secondary hub, and eventually we're going to get ourselves even more medals, so that should be fun, right? Well, luckily for me, I've only got about, oh god, I almost died there, because thankfully though, oh, what's that? It's green tea, so nothing major for this point, so let's go ahead and go back, and, oh yeah, there's a sun medal right there, so I think we got about 5 more left, but in forms of getting the sun medals before you actually reach to level 7 of the forms of sun medals collecting. And things can get pretty swell, but in forms of medal collecting at this point at the very end, because, well, after 5, or actually 4 medals left, but in forms of the sun medals grinding, before you're able to actually get into the last mandatory daytime level, but in forms of, you know, Anabat Day. And especially noticeable that we can actually get into the final continent in the game, because even then I'll speak about that until we get to the future points of the game. So, we got another moon medal, but again, nothing worth anything when it comes to getting more of those moon medals, because we've already got pretty much enough of them. So here's another one over there, in case if you're being very curious. And before we head into this level though, if we go all the way over there, we get ourselves the second and the final sun medal in the forms of, you know, the actual premise of the actual, secondary hub world for the forms of Anabat. So, as far as Anabat goes, I think this is more likely something to do with, Kurama. I think that's what it's at, but even then, I'm not exactly 100% sure on that one. So, here we go, on to Jungle Joyride in the forms of the nighttime level. So, kind of think about it, that this level does almost reminds me like I was watching a Disney film recently, but in forms of Moana, because the actual main setting of the forms of Jungle Joyride is almost exactly similar to how it does it where Moana takes place, because even then though, in Moana, usually it focuses on around but in forms of Moana herself, and one of the forms of one of her companions, most notably but in forms of that particular chicken companion, because I have no idea why, how the fact that their film was originally going to be making a little pig companion to be able to join along, but she pretty much stuck with the actual chicken companion, which I'm not sure why that's there, but even then though, that I don't know what it is for this though. So anyways, let's go ahead and continue onwards. Now, there's actually the trick to this level is the fact that you can able to finish the levels easily, but in forms of how the fact that, well, this level is really short compared to how it does in forms of the likes in Shimon Nights, because it informs of how the fact that as long as you're able to actually completely ignore the enemies for the entire time, you would able to actually classify for able to actually just go ahead and just finish the level as normal. But if you want to actually get yourselves the highest ranking, even especially noticeable by the forms of, you know, keep on leveling up by the forms of your Werehog, and especially noticeable with Sonic the Hedgehog eventually, well, it probably took you about like a little bit longer than that, but in forms of 10 minutes or more than that. It all depends on these little do or die situations like that, so anyways though, so let's go ahead and double check on here. There's nothing in here besides this record item, which I could potentially grab. So, by the way, if you step onto this little boardwalk right there, sometimes you actually decides to crumble down, so even then though, you definitely need to avoid a lot of water, because, you know, we can't able to actually go underwater, unlike how it does in new forms of, you know, both Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, but in forms of, most notably in the Chemical Plants level, in forms of classic and modern Sonic's levels and all that stuff, and possibly the same thing, but in forms of Sonic Forces, but in forms of, most notably in forms of, you know, Chemical Plants level in forms of, you know, in Classic Sonic's portion, because even then, unlike modern Sonic, that he doesn't go underwater at all, and especially noticeable with the Avatar as well, which, to me, it feels kind of limited, but in forms of some of these water levels to be like that, and, also that could be the same applies, but in forms of Sonic Lost World, and in forms of most, to be most accurately on the 3DS, but in forms of, you know, in Tropical Coast level, especially noticeable, but in forms of using the Yellow Wisp ability, or the Yellow Wisp power-up, in forms of the Yellow Drill, from both the Wii U and PC versions. So, that's pretty obvious with that point. So anyways, let's go up. And able to beat the likes of continuous amount of enemies around here. It's especially noticeable with these little flowery-based enemies right there. We haven't seen these flowery-based enemies ever since Shunan Nights, because that was the last time they actually come across into these guys. Because, you know, concentrating on the forms of the third continent, and as soon as you activate the switch, these platforms start to rise. Which, by the looks of all that, is the fact that if you can see on screen, not only does it take you to the third sun medal, but also the fourth sun medal. And that's, at this point, since I've only got about 2 more sun medals left, or as far as this point right now, I've only got 1 more sun medal left. And speaking of which, there we go. Now we actually got ourselves 4 sun medals, sorry. That means we can now actually get ourselves quite enough of these sun medals before we're able to actually get started, but in forms of Jungle Joyride daytime levels. So yeah, we don't have to worry about these medals from now on, because even I know that we pretty much accomplished that task. So, although, unless if you actually try to 100% this game, like myself included, until eventually at some point in the future, most notably on the Nintendo Wii version, which I'm still currently at, but in forms I'm still missing 3 sun medals and 3 moon medals as well, but in forms of equal in terms of how the fact what the actual medals requirements goes. And currently I'm playing through the PlayStation 2 version of Sonic Unleashed at the moment, but in forms of I'm actually reached onto the boss in the forms of Anabat, so even then, which means Egg Lancer. So, but even then I haven't really got into the PS3 version just yet, because I am still currently waiting, but in forms of to be ready for my practicing, but in forms of some of these DLC stages coming up, especially noticeable with this particular Let's Play extra stuff goes. Well, I would normally try to able to show you guys, but in forms of extra missions, but I'm probably not going to do that, because it's literally waste my time. But anyways, let's go on to this other side there, and grab the checkpoint, in case if we actually get some trial and error messed up. Well, it doesn't matter to me though, because we've only got about 39 extra lives at the moment, which is quite generous with this version, because even then though, that just like how it does in the ones in I would say both Sonic Colors, Sonic Generations, and especially noticeable in Sonic Lost World exponentially as well, your lives were able to actually be kept forever, which I give Sega some credit for, to actually just making your extra life grinding not much of an issue. Well, at least in a Wii and a PlayStation 2 version, that you have to grind extra 1-ups if you manage to get into the Gaia Gates temples until you're able to keep on collecting, you know, Sun and Moon medals, which is the only time you can able to actually use the Sun and Moon medals throughout. So, here we go, onto this next section right there. I suggest you go onto the right, because we do need to activate the switch. I believe the switch is going to be all the way up there, but of course we need to be very careful right there, because as you can tell, these waterfalls will actually just force you to go all the way down to the water. So even though if that happens, then you'll automatically die. So have to watch out for that. It also reminds me of almost related to I don't know if it classify as the wind current. Oh, I totally forgot about that sun medal, so let's go and grab that. Well, it doesn't matter though, because we've already got quite enough of those sun medals for now. So even then though, we can able to actually get started, but in forms of, you know, the Jungle Joyride daytime. Whoa! That was close. Oh man. That was a really lucky lucky lift right there, because even then, if I accidentally die on that particular waterfall section, although I got to the checkpoint when I was before, but I might actually lose my chance to gain an S rank for this level, because normally that's how it happens when it comes to trial and error moments is like that, even for, yeah. In fact, this might actually be my second, or truth be told, the second time in a row, or in this case the third time we're going to be getting our S rank in forms of the nighttime level kind of thing about it, at least as far as for my circumstances for that anyway. So I should probably explain about this actually, because today was actually in forms of the 2nd of May. Sorry, I kept on thinking of Easter for some reason, because even then Easter is already over this year, so unless until, you know, 2019 until next year, but even then that's besides the point. So, recently, during the likes of yesterday, but in forms of the 1st of May, there's one thing I haven't mentioned about this and during the last video, is that recently, I managed to watch myself a brand new film I just watched. Now, I would normally try to able to watch Deadpool 2 at some point soon, but the thing is, I'm in a Marvel superhero mood kind of syndrome, basically, because recently I've watched the latest installments of the forms of the Avengers, but in forms of the Avengers Infinity War, which, that film was actually very, very cool by the looks of all that. And, to top it all off, that the reviews, especially noticeable in both critics and fans alike, is doing super positive. Actually, before we take the red stone all the way to this little pendulum, I'm gonna have to get that moon medal right there, even though I can't help it for myself to actually grind for those things, but normally that's how you can get when it comes to able to doing medal hunting and all that stuff, which even then, that might be sounds better enough as it is. So anyways, let's go and activate that particular grabber thingy right there, so that means we can able to actually go up and able to actually activate the lever to open up the gate. Oh, there's a moon medal. Oh shoot, I was too late. It might be not worth it at this rate, because even then, we're pretty sure we've got quite enough moon medals as it is, as you probably already know, because, you know, what I found is kind of strange, though, is the fact that originally, this level was supposed to be level 6 moon medal level for at particular points, but no, it was actually forms of Shumar Knight instead. I think it's pretty obvious because of the fact that how long that level's gonna take. But I'm pretty sure that might be something a little bit more uncommon thing as far as I'm aware, though. So anyways, though, we got ourselves this particular Titan enemy again, ever since during the likes of, well, Shumar Knight, and especially noticeable with Empire City Knight. Well, let's just hoping if we're able to actually not giving up on this guy throughout. Well, thankfully, though, we don't have to worry about the bottomless pit every now and then, though, so even then, that if I manage to get knocked back, then I'm still pretty much on the ground, so thankfully, though, I don't have to worry about this tradition. So, I think it's about time to able to finish him off. Yeah, it's about time to finish him off, because, you know, I suggest you're able to let his health decrease very, very low, because if it gets to the halfway point, it goes ridiculously fast with all this, quick time events you have to deal with. Well, if you manage to able to keep on, decreasing his health, basically, it'll get slower, but in forms of button, timing reaction, so that's pretty obvious with that point. Now, if you think this level's about to be over, but it turns out there's going to be still more to it, because, you notice this waterfall was actually blocking the actual, Gaia key. And, basically, the entire impression of this particular point at the very end is the fact that we need to do a puzzle solving, because even then, you have to go those in a chronological order, which this means that actually represents whenever when the flowers blooming and all have you. So, I'm presuming this might actually be the first switch, and then, again, if you made the switch wrong, then you have to do the entire sequence again, so even though it doesn't really matter though, because even then, that this particular location is not that hard, even especially noticeable that, oh, I believe there's another sun medal from up there. And yes, much like how it does in Shumar Knight, if you're about to get a chance to get yourself some of these, you know, sun or moon medals, basically you're gonna have to be very quick, because these little, grappling stuff will actually crumble down very, very quickly. So even then, if you don't make it at the right time, then you're probably not gonna get it, unless if you actually replay the level again, so anyway, so now we need to actually activate the last switch as soon as when it gets to the actual flower image. And that way, we can able to actually access the finishing points of this level. And we're pretty sure enough we get ourselves a Gaia gate. Or in this case, a Gaia key, rather, sorry. So, anyways, it only took me about 10 minutes on that level, so it's quite short enough as it is. And a nice, beautiful S rank. So, yeah, pretty fantastic at the same time. So, yeah. So yeah, we got ourselves 8 sun medals and 3 moon medals. So again, no point for actually able to keep on grinding moon medals, because as you can see now, I'm pretty much leveled up into forms of level 7 in new forms of sun medals. So yeah, I'm pretty proud about that actually. But even then, let's go ahead and level up Unleashed mode, and let's go ahead and level up combats for the Werehog. But even then, we're probably not going to be able to come across into a Werehog level anytime soon, until when we get to the very end of the game. Trust me, we will able to get to that point, and yeah, that's what I can say about it. Now, before we get into An a Bad Day, after all, I've pretty much gone through 120 sun medals after all, although as you can see on screen, I've got right about now 124 sun medals at the moment right now. So even then, that's well, somehow we still need to able to actually talk to Professor Pickle every once in a while, because obviously because of how the fact that he needs to know what the mission objectives we're gonna have to deal with next. So anyways, let's head back to Shumar for about, I don't know, almost the final time. Well, not exactly the final time just yet, because obviously there's still more to come here. So, like, by the forms of after completing the forms of An a Bad Day, then we can able to actually deal with, or actually also at the same time, smash to restore the 6th continent. Oh, you, I don't wanna talk to you guys. I just need to talk to Professor Pickle. I don't have time for your chat. Seriously, so many ways you can actually run into people so easily, especially noticeable if you want to speed things up, but in forms of keep on using a jump dash every once in a while. But then the next thing you notice is that if you accidentally press the jump button almost near to these narrow or the arrow-based townspeople you want to talk to, you can easily run into them so easily like that. But even then, I have no time for games. But anyways though, let's go ahead inside this Professor Pickle's lab, and we can able to actually have a chat with him to see what the next part of the forms of the certain requirements we can actually do next. So, your new powers should allow you to access to a new area in Anabat. It's not much further now, Sonic my boy. Head to Anabat and place a Chaos Emerald in that temple. So yeah, that's where I can usually go for that point, even though that the majority of the very end of that particular quest, before you're able to actually finish up the entire main focus of the game, is to actually place these pieces back into its place, in the forms of the planet Earth itself. That means we can now able to actually get back into Anabat, but this time we're going to be doing a Anabat daytime level. So yeah, this might actually be the final mandatory daytime level before the true final level in the game, because even though, again, we're not going to get into that until when we get to a couple of videos later, even throughout the majority of the actual future points of the day. But anyways, let's go ahead and shift to the daytime of the forms of Anabat's hub world itself, and we can able to get this thing started, but in forms of, well, just for the sake of getting into the actual main level itself, obviously, from this little fun fact. So, yeah, recently I just watched the Avengers Infinity War, and as I mentioned to you before, that it looks very, very good, but in forms of not only critics, but also fans alike as well. But unlike how it does in the forms of Star Wars The Last Jedi, which did came out about a couple of days ago. But yes, before we get to this kind of stuff, here we have ourselves Jungle Joyride daytime level. Again, you do need to acquire 120 sun medals before you actually access to this level, because if you don't have that enough sun medals, well, keep on replaying the previous levels as you already been into before, then you would able to get yourself some sun medals that way. Especially noticeable if you're used to with the forms of the nighttime levels, quote unquote, then you would able to actually get yourselves these sun medals easier, because even though you're not in the speed of sounds, unlike how it does in the forms of the daytime levels. So here we go, folks. This is Anabat, also known as Jungle Joyride, and this is by far the hardest daytime level, I feel like, because even then though, well, alongside with this next and the final continent in the game, which we'll probably get into it at some point in the future, which even then though, first off, we'd like to point things out, is the fact that, I do have to say though, is that this level looks absolutely gorgeous, especially noticeable on the PlayStation 3, and especially noticeable on the Xbox 360 version for that as well. It almost reminds me like I was on a holiday trip, or in this case, the holiday vacation or some stuff like that. Oh, of course we got ourselves a Dr. Eggman's dummy spring and all that stuff, which that's as far as you might think. So anyways, let's go ahead and just speed things up a little bit. I almost said soups up, which even then that might be sounds a little bit more, well, odd, that little spellings department. So anyways, this is why the platforming segments themselves in this level can get really, really treacherous, and especially noticeable by the forms of how difficult this thing can be, and how the fact that you need to be very accurate with the forms of controlling, and especially noticeable with the actual levels layout. But even then, as long as you know what you're trying to be doing, then it's not too bad, honestly. But even then, let's go and do this quick time events. Thankfully, though, we still got plenty of time to do that. And, oh god, this is where the frame rate starts to kill itself. But in forms of, if you ever play this on the PlayStation 3 version most accurately, that, the frame rate on this particular section right there runs almost like, I don't know, 20 frames per second, which even though it's not pleasing to look at, because I think, what the game encourages me to do, but in forms of how the fact with the frame rate issues, but specifically onto this level alone, that normally it does have a really hard time to able to run into everything, but in forms of the frame rate stuff and all that stuff. Oh god. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, with the frame rate issues is always there for the sake of like, you know, it just kills the actual pacing and all that stuff. Mainly these little crumbling pillars that are about to be crumbling down at one point, but normally as far as the actual frame rates themselves goes, that's how I can usually talk about how bad the frame rate was in this particular stage themselves, or the stage itself, honestly. So we got ourselves this little robots guy again, which, by the looks of all that, much like how it does it from before, we need to dodge bombs along the way, and especially some shockwaves and etc. And especially this little giant laser from behind. So Again, it's pretty easy to dodge though, as long as you actually know what the actual main purpose is at. So, anyways though, so we've almost nearly towards the end of this level though. Thankfully though, we got a checkpoint right there, so... Okay, just be very careful right there, so you don't accidentally got hit by this little, oh my lord! This is getting crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but, oh, we got ourselves a achievement unlocked, sweet. Which is the forms of Half Moon. Which basically, in order to actually get that achievement, is by simply we need to collect 100 moon medals. So I've already mentioning about this before. Okay, so B, A, and Y. Well, that'll do. Okay, that'll do for now. Yeah, because I have to concentrate on the forms of some of these quick time events, as far as you guys already know. Oh my lord, this is getting intense. This is really getting intense, but in forms of not only the actual level structure itself, but also too much level gimmicks that we have to most likely focus on. But even then, okay, be very careful of these little obstacle around here, because if you manage to able to get blown off by the forms of this little rapid water, it's instant death, so you have to watch out for that. So that's as far as I can tell for that point. So let's be that there, and we can able to actually just ride along. And I suggest you go slowly on this part, because if you accidentally boost on this particular part, not only you get yourselves a knockback by the forms of this little well-placed bombs, but also you might actually fly yourself towards the bottomless pit up ahead. So even though you don't want to let that happen though, so... Alright, okay, so be very careful. X, and B, and that's about it. So there's only two quick time events I have to concentrate on. I would normally try to go for a shortcut by the forms of that rainbow rings, but I accidentally just missed that, so... Okay, left bumper and double X's. Whoop-de-doos! Hooray! I love that. Gotta go first! No, not the Sonic X reference. No, no, never. I don't know why I'm saying that, but anyway. Really. So yeah, again, I really do enjoy the Avengers, you know, Infinity War. That, as far as I remember, by the forms of according to on the news, it did a top-notch when it comes to the box office list department, because even then though, although I may be wrong about that, but even then though, let me know in the comments below if you think that the box office in the forms of the Avengers Infinity War did absolutely well. But even then though, that I'm also able to research up on that properly so that I can explain to you guys about that, so... This part also reminds me of almost very similar to Green Forest in the forms of Sonic Adventure 2, whenever these springs are placed in one platform to another, which, it does remind me of that. Man, I really love the music in this game, especially noticeable in the nighttime version of that particular level as well, because it looks so ambient, and it's so really cool to listen to. Okay, so we've almost got one more portion left. Simply homing attacking these enemies, and get onto the rail, and... Booyah! I'm presuming this level's done. Yeah, because I can see there's a Gaia Gate, the Gaia Key, sorry. I keep on thinking of the Wii and the PlayStation 2 version for some reason, and we got ourselves yet another S rank, so how about that then, huh? I'm guessing I was pretty much masterful when it comes to this particular stage, but again, if you have a first time playing this level though, this level can get really difficult as far as this point in time, because normally, you were able to die so many times by the forms of crumbling pillars, especially noticeable with the forms of these little, wow, pretty much everything. So even then, like Eggman's robots, bottomless pits everywhere, and you know the number of things of the forms of what I was going to talk about, by the forms of how there's so many ways you can die in this level though. So we're actually going to, oops, I accidentally died right there. So oh, I just realized I have no rings, so probably need to get some rings then, huh? So, with that being said, folks, I'm afraid we have to end things off at this point here, so join me next time on Let's Play Sonic Unleashed for the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3, or Sonic Unleashed HD, whatever you want to call it. It's the fact that we're going to be here onto the boss level, new forms of Anabat, by new forms of Egg Lazo. So, see you guys then.